Bookseller Crow on the box. Tales from an empty bookshop.
Good evening and welcome to the latest edition of our events from our still empty bookshop, in which authors who we would have loved to have graced our shop, along with your good selves who are out there in the ether, speak to us today via the magic of Zoom. And tonight we welcome DBC Pierre. DBC is the author of 6 books, including the Booker Prize-winning Vernon God Little, and the much more recent Release the Bats, an excellent pocket guide to writing your own novel, in which he states, any job of writing obviously relies on coffee, tobacco, and at least one bender a week to blow away any nesting conversation. Conservatism, beg your pardon.
Conversation as well.
Yeah, DBC, welcome.
Hey, thank you very much. Do we get the little crow noise? I like
You
the
will
crow.
do. Oh yeah, you
okay,
will.
you're going to add that later, are you?
That gets added later. That will be there. Yeah.
I think it's a fascinating symbol. I love crows.
Yeah.
They do mathematics. And
yeah.
Is it chosen because they pick shiny things, or
The bookshop name.
Sorry?
The bookshop name.
Yes.
No, it's my partner's surname, but also
okay.
We took it from Crystal Palace Park, where there are an enormous amount of crows around there all the time, particularly in the mornings.
Excellent.
Right.
It's a good bird and not mentioned enough. So well done. I'll have to read. I'll look at this afterwards, just to get the little noise.
Yeah, you will. And yes, okay. So you're going to tell us a little bit about your book and also give us a little bit of a reading to begin with. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is, let me see, the storyline is a single father trying to raise his children with smartphones. And so he's on a vertical curve of change in a very similar inner world and a town very similar to ours, but unnamed. And it's a place where big tech has taken over the agenda. It's crossed from the market spaces, from shopping spaces, into people's lives, and is now observing them and feeding back wherever they are, and collecting data, mining them for data, basically farming them in this place where he lives. And the book kicks off with his youngest child wanting a smartphone, and he spends the rest of the book on a vertical curve of change, not so much wondering how to keep his kids straight and narrow, but wondering what straight and narrow even is anymore, because the rules are changing second by second. Of course, algorithms are running big tech, and they favor conflict in terms of social media because it's much more profitable. We say much more and we interact much more when we're in conflict. And so the algorithm is building him into a world that he can't escape from. And the book is about him trying to deal with that or trying to find a way out. It's so recently finished that I can remember big chunks of it. Now, the book is full of laughs, actually, but there's a reading from a funeral parlor, which I can remember by heart, or I think I can. So if that's not a cop-out, I'll try.
Go ahead.
What do you reckon, Jonathan?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah? Go ahead.
See? Okay. The funeral home was a sandy brick bungalow wedged between Amos Disposals and Dan's Outdoor Land on the westbound exit where the speed camera sits. By the time Lon found it, she was yellow. He had carried a bag to hospital that morning with aloe vera gel, mini pretzels, more books, fresh underwear, including the pair that said it won't spank itself, a therapy meant to run on wrongness, and a hastily framed picture of little Egan and baby Annie like hampers in the crooks of his thick arms. The bag was still on the front seat. She was in a coffin. He never lost the pressure to deliver that bag. A hovering black suit processed their credit card within sight of her straw-colored hair. It was swept up in a way she hated. She really hated that. The suit offered a viewing with gauze over her face because some people prefer the distance, he said. It was wedding veil material. What kind of zombies were they? Ron ripped it off. He wanted to roll her on her side the way she always slept. He wanted to stroke her belly. He wanted to climb in beside her and have the suit nail the box shut. People always come back from these places saying she looked so peaceful, and it's bullshit. She was a mess. If you saw her like that on any other day, you wouldn't say peaceful, you'd call someone. Her head was small and loose on her neck. It wanted to roll when he stroked it. He settled it back as the terminal beeped and declined his $5,000 payment. He thought it would. He lied about it. Better to vaguely pretend to have the money. Although what were they going to do? Stand her outside till he paid?
I'm impressed that you can remember that. As far as I
That's called editing. This we had a lot of editing to do with this one. Not editing, but a lot of tweaking due to. You'll see the book has a long binary section. It's a binary novel,
well,
and to keep those columns in place, a single, so much as one comma would throw 200 pages out of synchronization. So I mean, I've had a lot of opportunity to look at it.
Yeah, I was going to come to that in a minute. You've said in the past that you don't consider yourself a satirist.
Have I?
Yeah, you have.
Okay.
Do you consider this a book of satire?
Well, it is. I think if I've said that in the past.
Well, in fairness, you said because the world is beyond satire.
Okay, yeah, for that reason, it's tricky. Yeah, they are satires, of course. It's all of these books and for all the novels operate on a simple principle. The theme comes from news stories, and I apply a slippery slope fallacy to all the stories. So we take something outrageous that happens, that appears in the news, and then I apply the slippery slope. What would happen if it went even further? And of course, they do go further. In every case, the book, while funny, speaking of previous books, while they're funny and have a lot going on in them, they are kind of superseded by reality in the end. And as a result, I think we're kind of losing our sense of irony. It's the new normal is anything goes.
I mean, how long did you take writing this? Because there seems to be an extraordinary amount of work gone into it. Not just in the design of it, but in the depth of where you're getting your laughs from, and everything else that's going on. Well,
thank you for recognizing that. You don't have to when you read the book. You don't have to think what a lot of work. But the thing is, I was confronted very early on with the certainty that I'm going to smoke in your bookshop. Is that okay?
That's fine, man.
Great. We love your bookshop. We love Bookseller Crow.
I used to run a bookshop in the late 80s where we smoked in the shop, and one day
I remember those days.
Somebody set fire to a dump bin. One of those
in a bookshop
bins that have, well, no, they're cardboard. They were called dump bins. They're cardboard bins that would display books in. One went up in flames. But there we go.
Oh wow, yeah. I bookshop's a little bit vulnerable to that. So I was saying the setting out upon this book. Once I knew what it would be, it was very clear that I couldn't take any shortcuts. Weirdly, although I'm writing about a throwaway time, such as the one we live in, which is completely instant gratification and throwaway, and it actually lends itself more to a WhatsApp novel, or a text, a hypertext, or something really quick, flash fiction, because it's so been and gone even by the time we realize what's happening. And I realized, because of the nature of our times, that in fact the work would have to be overbuilt, like a vessel, like a ship. It would have to be absolutely meticulous, and visibly so, in order to make the irony, or the satire, if you like, stick. And it needed expressing in the fullest possible terms. So it did take a while. It took 4 years on my part, and then we've spent the better part of the last year, I guess, getting the binary section into shape, which is a lot of back and forth. Not just me, but the incredible team at Faber, and even an outside consultant copy editor. We've all had to spend plenty of time getting this paginated and making sure it fits. So it's been a long job.
And in that time, did a lot of what you started out thinking come to overtake, or become even more?
Well, about the first year I was writing this, I stupidly started inventing technologies to go in the book. And of course, by the end of that first year, the technologies all existed. I thought of wristwatch drones, for instance. They existed back then, and they're old news. And so I had to take a different approach and look further ahead, but also look more at the human interface, more at the human changes going on. And so I've ended up building the apps and the various technologies in the book based on the symbolic truth of what I think is happening in our relationship with big tech. So yeah, it was the whole thing. The whole job has been like running alongside a departing train, trying to jump on.
Did you get sucked into doing a lot of research and reading lots of copies of Wired, or
well, only the usual amount, I have to say, because the world these characters live in has its own apps and its own technologies, and many resemble ours. But also, one of the problems with writing a contemporary novel, I had exactly the same issue with Vernon God Little, is that you have to be really careful what you put in, because if you take stuff from the culture, you don't know what's still going to be around in 10 and 20 years. So on one hand, I was helped with this because the world is an invented world that they live in, or it's a parallel world. But back writing Vernon, for instance, I had to choose songs that had already become evergreens and favorites. And I had to use references that would be remembered for as long as they could. And if I had used certain things, for instance, if I'd have been writing a book in the 80s or something, and I put Milli Vanilli or whatever in there, that would have come and gone really quickly. And so I'm faced with this one that really more than half of the technologies in the book are invented for the book, but you'll recognize the feeling of them from the stuff we have today.
For sure. And even more so in some respects, I think. One of the through lines of the book is the currency of internet or social media presence that people can gain, and how they can very quickly become famous. I mean, not just overnight, but within hours or days or minutes or whatever. And I mean, obviously that's an extension of kind of YouTube or Instagram influencers or whatever, but you take it to some beautiful lengths. I mean, I can't remember now the people who end up living on 4 legs rather than 2. Donkey.
Yeah, the viral craze.
Fabulous.
You see, Jonathan, the thing is, I mean, last year or the year before, it already seems like an eternity ago. There was the Tide Pod craze in the States, a viral Tide Pod craze where you would eat the washing machine detergent in that little pod.
You're kidding me?
And it got, yeah, that's what sparked the idea. Obviously, because we've been through all the crazes, this challenge, that challenge, that challenge, and of course, even world leaders have gotten involved. People in the White House were doing some of these YouTube challenges, and hence, our notions of authority and the relative place of people is completely eroded, which on one hand is interesting and good, but human beings, it's part of the book's argument that actually we're quite strictly hardwired as a social creature. We've bumped into the edge of our capacity. I mean, there are many things we can adjust in the mind, but we're built for face-to-face contact. And we're built to copy others and copy our peers. And so it used to happen in small groups, in mobs. Now it's a global thing due to this media. And you can get hundreds of people. There was the blue whale phenomena 2 or 3 years back, which was basically a suicide, a range of increasing challenges ending with a suicide challenge. And it actually did kill people. And then nobody could actually find the source of it. Maybe it was a myth, maybe it was fake news, but it rippled through, particularly Asian society, and young people died from it. The number along the way of writing this book, and again, going back a couple of years, the UN has published as a death toll for selfies now. In there, many hundreds of people who die from selfies because they go onto railway tracks or they climb tall buildings, and some very famous bloggers have fallen off and been killed from doing that. And so it's I didn't have to research any of that. We're completely surrounded by it, but also it's a natural progression of the me phenomena of the last century, where the markets have individualized and isolated us, I think. I mean, some people will attribute it to social changes, and that's also true. But essentially, we are much more easy to manipulate as individuals. We're much more alone, which is why I'm sure you'll find the death toll from stupid viral crazes is much less probably in places like Russia, very possibly in China, where there are strong social, people's hardwiring is still active, and they're very strong social, personal networks and family networks. Whereas as a culture, we Anglos have kind of been jettisoning family ideas for the last century. It's a rarity now, except in wonderful parts of the country. It still happens that people care for their elderly in the worst circumstances and keep them at home. But otherwise, we've gone through a century of becoming individuals and wondering what is in it for us. And it's reached the ultimate, it's reached the apogee at a time where our business, and literally a very lucrative business now, is simply taking repeated photographs of ourselves for others. And owing to the hardwiring we have to follow people's asses and to copy our peers, everyone is doing that and still feeling like individuals. So the market is having, I mean, the big tech is absolutely loving this, because we are literal lambs to the slaughter.
And of course, you've got your central character, whose wife has died, so and who has a kind of not too good relationship with her mother. So you've got a fractured family there for a start, but you also use his. I mean, he's not that old really, but he's still allowed bafflement at kind of these things, which seem to be directed at not just a younger generation, but at his daughter, who's only 9 years old. And there's and there still seems to be a kind of adult support system hovering around her to kind of not say that it's stupid, but almost the opposite, like to say, yes, this is a thing, we can get you out of it, whatever. Yeah. Anyway, I was going to say, you've referred a couple of times to the fact, the form of the book, which for a large part, I don't know if you can see it there, is produced.
I can see that.
Right, it's my audience out there. It's produced in 2 columns, one of which continues the narrative and tells the story, and the second column, which is basically a feed from an equivalent of Twitter or whatever. Would that be correct in saying that?
Yeah, it's the culture.
The culture. And it kind of directly reflects what's going on in a lot of the narrative, in the way that an algorithm would on our own desktop or whatever, if we had that.
Mm-hmm.
You were looking at shoes. Do you want to look at some more shoes or whatever? But it also is cleverer than that, because it's also a lot of the subplot is in there as well. Would that be the correct thing to describe it as?
Sure.
Yeah.
No, well spotted. They influence each other, and so he's trying to.
It is quite tempting to read just the one side and the narrative for a few pages and then go back.
You can, though. You can skip it. You can skip that side. Yeah, it's built to be bomb-proof in that respect, and you do get the story. If you just want to speed through it, that's fine.
But you'd miss a lot of the kind of the subtlety of it, I think, as well.
They ping off of each other. The thing is, the culture is listening to is in control of all his data, and is listening to him, and so feeding back, which is kind of what's happening as well to us, where we're being observed, our behavior is being logged, and we're being fed things according to what the algorithm thinks our personalities are like, and that will only get tighter and tighter and tighter. So that section through the length of the book, it starts out just as a culture column which sets the scene, but it gradually figures him out and starts to feed back until by the end it's abusing him and playing on his worst fears and weaknesses.
I mean, there's a whole point scoring, and I mean literally a point scoring scenario involved in it as well, which is kind of frightening, but probably not that far down the road, I don't think.
No, well, it's happening. The difference is there, it's visible to him. Of course, it's happening to us. And that, we have to expect that now. Mortgage applications, loan applications, job suitability, all these things will absolutely, if not now, very soon, be run through an algorithm that includes the people we know and our contacts and the words they use and their credit worthiness and our interests and etc. So things are, we're really being locked into the teapot. At least the young are. I mean, obviously they can kiss my ass, but if you're a child with a phone, and it's the point of the book, if you're a child with one of these devices, you are being farmed now like a crop, and that won't stop for the rest of your natural life. Unless we start the, put it down challenge, and that's not going to happen.
On a technical note, has there been an audio book, an audio recording of this?
God, how would that work? I don't know. There hasn't been. No, there hasn't to date been one. And I don't know if plans are afoot, but actually that would be an interesting production.
It would work.
Immediately think.
It might work as theatre in a way that rather
two halves of a stage.
Yeah. But as an audio book, the problems of doing those two things simultaneously, I can't really see that. And also, I mean, even as an electronic book, it must have a slight kind of awkwardness to it, because not quite the same as me being able to read ahead 4 pages and then come back and do that.
Yeah. I'll say this, it is the best reason of a book to actually go into Bookseller Crow and get a physical copy.
Good man.
And that is absolutely true. No, apart from which is the most beautiful production of a book, any of my books ever, anywhere. It's very good. It's a superb production, but you're right. And I think already there could be teething issues while they figure out how best to run this technically on devices like Kindle, etc., whether it's a graphic or whether it's rendered as text. And it should be possible, and the experience should be fine. I'm thinking there's probably going to be a little bit of swipe left, right on a page, but definitely it works best on paper, and so into the Crow.
Are you working on something else now, or?
I am actually. Yeah, I'm just a small one on a theme of chance, on a theme of gambling, in the spirit of Francis Bacon, the great artist, and others, answering questions about the extraordinary hold and the extraordinary relationship between individuals and gambling and games of chance, and its relationship to the universe and to general good fortune, which is something that fascinates me. You'll notice there's a lot of quantum mechanics in this book, or there's mention of it, and I'm increasingly fascinated by the notion that that we can observe, and in some cases control the big beams and rods of the universe that dictate fortune and malice and stuff. I think our minds are much more connected with the wider universe than we think. And anyway, this will be a novella-sized book, but it should be out in 2022, and it's called Little Snake. Okay.
Already got a title.
I'm working on it now during and keeping out of trouble, keeping my germs off the street. Not that I have any worse than I used to have.
How has lockdown been for you? You've been okay? You've been...
Yeah, it's just been full of work. I've been very lucky. I've actually spent it really just kind of, in pain inside for anyone raising 4.5 kids in a tower block somewhere during what was the most outstanding spring in living memory and the most fabulous early summer. And it's just been the most malicious fortune, the whole thing. But I've been very lucky. I'm surrounded by countryside. And as I say, this is very, very fresh, hot off the presses. And so I've been really busy with that and keeping out of trouble. Having finished the book, normally I would cut loose and run around and, you know, and have some parties after so many years of work, but that can wait. You know, wait until we're vaccinated.
You get compared to various writers in various interviews and things. Most of the comparisons, I think, are pretty wrong.
Barbara Cartland.
Yeah. William Burroughs, mate, because
William Burroughs, okay.
Yeah, but I can think of no higher praise than that. But this book reminded me of Kurt Vonnegut in lots of ways.
Ah, thank you. I used to love Kurt Vonnegut.
I mean, that's the closest. I don't like comparisons necessarily, but if somebody comes into the shop and asks me, what's it like, that's what I would say, I think.
That's very, very kind. Well, great. I hadn't thought of that, but I must say, I used to read and reread Vonnegut just for that fabulous freedom he had.
Yeah.
And I guess he used to roam exclusively in other worlds of his creation, and that's great. Well,
and he was also very.
I've been asked already. This is actually the first show that we're doing for the book, so I don't have any practiced answers, but I have already been asked, just by the by, whether this was a work of science fiction, which I'd never considered because I think it's a human book, but I guess it kind of is in a way.
I mean, it was a question I could have asked you, but I mean, it's only kind of 15 minutes into.
You want to do it now? We'll rewind and you can ask me.
Well, we've been known to do that, but we're not going to.
Okay. Put the crow noise.
Yeah.
Do bloopers later and put the crow noise in there.
Yeah. That's very good. Yeah, we should. Well, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you very much. I wish we were there eating crisps and with a long night carousing ahead.
You would. I mean, at the time of writing Vernon, you mentioned Streatham High Road at one point in something. Yeah. You were living in Balham, I think, weren't you? So
yep.
We're not that far away. So
Yeah. No, I miss that. I'm a complete sucker for bookshops. They're like opium dens for me. Just that glorious smell of binding glue and ink and the endless possibilities. It's one of the only places I can think of where if you were to get abducted and locked in a bookshop for any number of years, you would come out more mentally stable than you went in.
Excellent stuff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and good luck.
They can find you a book for your girlfriend, your husband, your girl, or your boy. And if you've got a need for an uplifting read, Justine and Jonathan can pick out a book you'll enjoy. What a book at the Bookseller Crow on the hill. What a book at the Bookseller Crow on the hill. Crystal Palace Hill, that is. But you can order online.